All right, listen up. We are back. I am on location for another episode of the Prime 2 Rise podcast. I'm coming to you from my hotel room, my crummy hotel in New York City. I am up here for several reasons, several clients that I need to see, several projects that I need to walk, and it was a last-minute trip. So because of the week that it is and what we're commemorating with the anniversary of 9/11, I think it's a little busy up here. So hotels are sold out. And they're seriously expensive. So I found that out the hard way. But we're not here to talk about that. We're not here to whine. We are here to prime to rise. We are here to prime you, which means to inject, to fuel you, to rise in your career. I have an amazing guest today, somebody whose content I follow. As a guy who is not a finished carpenter, I have no patience. I do not have the dexterity, nor do I have the finesse to do what Mr. Tommie Mullaney does. Go follow him on Instagram, Black Label Carpentry. It's truly incredible stuff. I catch myself watching it all the time just for ideas to do on my house. But what I really want to walk through with Tommie, Tommie's a special individual. Tommie has had an interesting life. He's had some obstacles. He has some personal things that he has going on that not everybody goes through, but many people do. And none of that has stopped him from taking advantage of finding a niche and finding a very lucrative career in construction that has allowed him to start his own business, become his own entrepreneur, and take that career to a different state of his choosing. And he could have taken that anywhere because of the skill set that he has. So, Black Label Carpentry, owner and operator, Tommie Mullaney.
Tommie, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time coming. So Tommie and I have been talking on Instagram back and forth and sharing our thoughts on a lot of things about the industry, the goods, the bads, the uglies. But I want to start with your early life, just like I do with, any guest that we have come on. I want to understand where you came from and maybe some of the obstacles that were hard for you growing up. So where'd you grow up from like 0 to 14, like pre-high school?
Yeah.
What was life like for
you? So I was born and raised in England until I was 7. And then at the age of 7, my parents decided that we were going to pack up our entire home, sell it, and head over to the USA. And we landed in Naples, Florida. So Southwest Florida, beautiful place. And I lived there from 7 to about 25, 26 years old. And I grew up there, went to school there, elementary, middle, and high school. So really that's like my home. And
now, when you say Naples, I think a lot of people hear Naples, Florida, and they think a lot of wealth, right?
Yes.
Is that the situation you grew up in?
Yeah. I wasn't necessarily one of those people that, had all the millions, as nice as that may be. But it did put me in that audience, which eventually turned into where my career went, is dealing with those people and getting into finished carpentry. But I think the whole business is in Florida, it is a very, very wealthy area. It's its own little bubble. I did take it for granted, for sure. I didn't realize that till I left. But it brought a lot of great opportunities, especially for business. Great area to grow up in. It's definitely different.
And how did that, so when you were younger, right, and you were going into high school, what was that like for you? I mean, were you, because you had some struggles at home, right?
Yeah.
Things were, the relationship with your parents was a little bit strained. And I don't know. I think you had a tough time in high school with like teachers and things like that. Is that true?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a bit of a rocky road. My parents, when we came over here, they bought a business and ran a business together, and it was somewhat harmonious. But actually ended up when I was 12, they ended up splitting up and having a divorce, which wreaked a lot of havoc on me and them, of course, being in that situation. It was quite rough. Gosh, I remember when I was 12, my parents got divorced. My hair started to fall out, stuff like that I didn't really think about when I was a kid. I just, I'd put my fingers through my hair and think, oh, okay, this is kind of strange. Like, I didn't think anything of it. And all these years later, I look back at some of these things and I think, oh my goodness, like it was a rough situation. Um,
Yeah, my parents got divorced and my hair did not fall out.
no, yeah, it was rough. And I flip flop between my parents. I think that's what happens with a lot of kids when parents get divorced. Is I feel like sometimes that they feel like they have to pick a side. Because the parents are trying to play favorites, I guess you could say, and I'll get you this or I'll buy you that. So you flip flop back and forth. And gosh, I lived with my mom from 12 to 14, and then I moved in with my dad. My dad is a fantastic guy and gave me my work ethics today. I can't fault him for that, but unfortunately, he had quite a substance issue with alcohol. He raced motorcycles his whole life, had a career out of it, and I think when he retired, he was an adrenaline junkie, kind of how I am. But I think I had better control over my life, and he turned to drinking, and that took a major toll on my mental health. And then I ended up, going from my mom to my dad, and then back to my mom's house. So it's kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire. And gosh, I lived with my mom for many years, and then something just never added up in my brain. I always knew something was just off. I just didn't know what it was, and it wasn't until I met my current now wife, Alexa, and she
Your
kind of,
wife's name is Alexa?
yeah. So she brought.
My wife's name is Alexa.
Oh, no
Yeah.
kidding. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you know the same Alexa jokes as I do.
Oh God, yeah. You don't say Alexa jokes to my wife. It is not funny.
No, absolutely. So, gosh, she brought so much attention to me, and thinking, like this relationship that you have with your mother is not a healthy one either. And I just didn't know what it was. And
What
then,
way? What way was that not healthy?
so, my mother, plain and simple, is a narcissist. Whether she's going to get a doctor's, word for it that she is or not, was all these traits that they would do, kind of like gaslighting you, and kind of using you and love bombing. They would love bomb you and then just totally bring you down and make you feel like crap. And then they would love bomb you and then bring you back up. And it was like an emotional roller coaster. And I didn't know I was riding that roller coaster. I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know what it was.
I'm
And
smiling. I'm smiling because I went through the same thing with mine. So
oh gosh, it
we're
was
parallel.
exhausting. And, I eventually, I always tried to do the right thing. Um, at the age of, I think, 23, 24, it's kind of when I just started my business. I ended up signing onto a mortgage with my mother and her partner, which, you could call my stepdad, but, I signed onto a mortgage with them to try and help them out because I had such good credit and, really built a good foundation, because I wanted to do the right thing. And, you always want to help your parents. And in the end, I felt like I got used. And gosh, without going into too much detail, they stopped paying the mortgage on the place. It all got resolved and I'm out of it. I'm scot free. But boy, what an eye opener that was. I mean,
Yeah,
just,
so I can sympathize with that. Like I was in the same place, and I think for a lot of young people, they have narcissistic parents, specifically mothers.
yeah,
If you Google the definition, narcissistic mother will come up. I don't think anything for a father comes up,
right.
because of I think it's the ability to love bomb, like you just said, and
Absolutely.
unfortunately, most people don't realize that, if they ever realize it, until at least their late 20s. It's not something that I
Yeah.
fully acknowledged and came to terms with until I was almost 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
and you realize that it's not our job to raise our parents, right?
No.
Our parents are there to raise us, and unfortunately, not all parents show up the same way.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
However, I mean, it sounds like so both of your parents had some issues,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you got some positive things. I don't know if you got anything positive from your mother, but the work ethic, I think, is very important because I don't think enough people talk about work
Yeah.
ethic, especially when it comes from their father. Can you talk about what that work ethic means for you, like what that
Yeah.
looked like in your life and your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was one of those things. I worked with my dad since I was about 11, 12 years old. I always liked getting my hands on. My dad was a roofer contractor in London, very successful, and then he moved to the USA with us and bought an AC and electrical company. And Again, very successful. He's not the brightest when it comes to, being book smart, and neither am I, and I was always taught to kind of look down upon people like that. It's like, you don't want to be like that guy, he's not going to be successful. He doesn't know how to spell properly, but he was very successful, very hard driven, very honest. And gosh, time and time again, we would go to people's houses where we could have easily sold an AC unit brand new. And he would say, you know what? You can get another 6 months out of this. I'll nurse you along until your finances are right. He's just an honest businessman. And, I guess in some sense it may have hurt him, in the fact that he wasn't making as many sales as he could. But, that was short term. Long term, he was building relationships. And that's something that I tend to do a lot in the construction industry. It's very cutthroat, I feel, with builders nowadays. And everybody wants instant gratification. They want everything now. And nobody thinks, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. They're thinking 6 months at the very best. So, I'm very grateful for that. And at the same time, despite the negative experiences that I had with his drinking, it really turned me off of drinking. I did it a lot when I was younger. And I essentially abused alcohol from, 16 to 21. And I think I got it out of my system. I saw what effects it could have on relationships, your life, your health, especially. And so I just ended up, I'm not quit drinking completely. Once in a blue moon, I'll have a glass of wine socially, but I just don't find the need for it. So, the silver lining in that situation is I think has enabled me to take really good care of my health. And I think another thing is that I probably look a lot younger than what I am. I'm 28 years old, and I get people on jobs like saying, oh, this kid's 19, 20, 21. I'm like, I don't mind it. And I'm like, good, because, when I'm like 50, maybe I'll look 40. I like to try to take care of myself,
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely a good thing. So I think, especially with the drinking, a lot of people at a young age, like we all drink, and I have had my troubles, not necessarily with drinking, but, mentally dealing with things from my parents or my family or my friends or things that I experienced when I was younger. And I really couldn't address those things until I cut it back. Like you don't realize when you grow up and your parents do that all of the time, you think that that's part of life. You think that social situations revolve around drinking, vacations revolve around drinking, weekends revolve around drinking, watching football, whatever it is. And it really takes away from your ability to be productive, to address your purpose, to really be successful in anything, right? You kind of lose focus, and you lose productivity in doing things that are actually good for you outside of like what goes into your body, but the physical action of your day, right?
Agreed.
So, now, I think it's a good point, right? That we all have parents. The overwhelming majority of our parents, like 99% of parents, want good things for us. But they have a funny way of showing it. And not
absolutely.
everything that our parents do, we can learn good things from them, but we can also learn what not to do, right? So it's not to say don't get away from your parents, but it's to say you may have a narcissistic mother, and you need to be aware of that because that could be negative for you. You also may have an alcoholic father, and that may be negative.
Boundaries is a huge thing. I mean, gosh, in any relationship that you have, friends, family, whoever, colleagues at work, boundaries are so important, and they can be really difficult to set sometimes. Might feel awkward. I think once you get over that, it feels good. But you do have to keep reinforcing these boundaries depending on who you're dealing with, and I think as I get older, it's realizing that, my parents are humans too. And there's no manual on how to raise a child. So as you get older, you start to figure these things out. But I think at the same time, it's realizing that, to have me present in your life is a privilege, not a right. I'm your mother. I have to be in your life. And it's like, well, if you're going to treat me certain ways that I don't like, and you're not going to have any respect for my feelings or my boundaries or any of those, then no, I don't have to have you in my life necessarily. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that your time and your energy is so precious. You have to really guard it. Energy, you can get it back, but it's exhausting. Time, you'll never get it back. So make sure that, you try your best to be as efficient and use that time as good as you can. So I try to keep good people in my life. And I found that as I get older, that group of people gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But I'm okay with that. It's quality over quantity for me.
Mhm. Yeah, so that was dead on. I mean, you just said something that took me a very long time to understand. And I know so many young people that are going through it. I'm a youth football coach. I know some players that I have on my football teams in the last few years that are struggling with the same thing, and they're not even 10 years old.
Yeah.
So they have a long way to go, and they don't
Yeah.
realize the obstacle that's in front of them. So I hope somebody hears what you just said, because it's very important. It's important to understand that perspective, and to know that, it's not up to us to close the door either, but it's up to them to walk through it and to show that their intentions are right, especially when you have a wife and maybe kids, because it's not just about you at that point. It's about everything, their entire environment around them, especially as a man. You're
Agreed.
responsible for that. So
Yeah, it can be a really tricky little scenario to play, and you don't always know what the right choice is. And I don't know if there really is a right choice. You just kind of have to decide upon your situation and the variables, if you have kids, stuff like that, and grandparents and all those things. So, I think every individual is going to be a little bit different. And the same thing with these kids that are just now coming into it. You're going to see dads out there that are coaches, and they're so harsh on the kids. And gosh, you can literally make or break somebody based on that. And the negativity, like my dad, it was never, ever good enough. No matter what I did, it was never good enough. And so, to this day, I think that's why I'm such a perfectionist, because I always feel like it's never good enough. The silver lining in that situation is that I feel like the quality of my work is outstanding, but it comes at a price. And sometimes it comes at a price of others. It might come at a price of, my wife and our relationship, because I'm so deep into trying to perfect something that I can never switch off. So it's a very fine balance, and I do my utmost best to use those situations for the better. But that's not to say that I'm not perfect. I do screw up, I do mess up, but I address it. And I think as long as you recognize that you've, maybe messed up, or, you have a little bit of credit over here, and, you kind of have to shift your perspective and your time, based on the situation, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. So now, when you were growing up, am I wrong? Did you have an issue in school and not really feeling like you had a direction or a path?
Yeah.
Right? Can you talk about that? Ultimately, you wound up in carpentry, and you're making way more money than most college graduates make. And that's not necessarily a knock on college, but can you talk about your struggle and how you felt at the time when you were in school and
elementary school, I think you're young, you don't even know what stress is really. Silly stuff like, is somebody going to play with me on the playground? So you go through elementary, I'm in middle school, and I did okay. I made it through to get to high school. I always did really well. I played the trombone in the brass band, so I picked that up real quick. Ended up getting really good at that. And then got into freshman year of high school, and it all started to fall apart at the seams from there. Ninth grade into 10th grade, I did okay, but I never really applied myself. And, through high school, I was always used as an example of what not to be and what not to do. And I was always told by, my school guidance counselors that I would never make it, don't bother, all these just really horrible things that I didn't think that a school guidance counselor would be telling me. And even teachers using me as an example in front of the whole class of, don't be like this guy here that's a failure. He's not going to go anywhere, and you're going to be a bum on the streets. And the money has never really meant anything to me, but yeah, I'm making six figures, in 6 months, which to me is just astonishing, considering that, I always thought I was going to be a failure according to my teacher's standards. But in my head, I just knew that I was meant for more. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade and really just put my head down, started working with my hands. 17, I was working with grown men on a construction site for a general contractor. At the age of 19, I went straight into finished carpentry, and gosh, it just all unfolded from there. I never looked back.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you were in school, and then you dropped out in 10th grade and you didn't go back.
Nope, that was it. Never looked back. I had no interest.
Now, what made you drop out? You just like weren't having it anymore? You were just like, screw school, I'm all set with high school, this is bogus?
Yeah, I mean, to put it in a nutshell, the high school that I was supposed to go to with all the kids that I grew up with in elementary and middle school, I was out of the zone. So I was in a new high school. I knew about 2 or 3 people in this new high school. So I didn't know anybody. And it was rough as can be, like a lot of gang stuff, a lot of fighting. It was pretty rough. So it probably wasn't like the best foundation to be in. I felt like the teachers were similar, and like people go to high school and they have all this high school pride, and they're wearing all the colors. I couldn't stand the place. I literally couldn't stand it, and I felt like I was going to jail every day, and I would count down the hours until I got to leave. And eventually, I started skipping school and running out the back fence and hitching rides home from friends just to get out of school, because I thought, this is pointless. Like, it's not pointless for everybody. There's people that need it. But I thought to myself, I know my math basics. I know my history basics. I have the education. It is important. But it got to a point where I just thought, this is just stupid. This is a waste of my time. And I thought I could be going making money right now instead of sitting here staring at a clock for 8 hours, learning stuff that I'm never, ever going to use in my everyday life. And even as
and if there was a lot of gang violence and activity or whatever and stuff like that, I'm guessing that the level of education probably wasn't the best.
No.
So I want to be careful with the message here, because I don't think that we're advocating to drop out of school.
No, absolutely not. No.
However, I do think that you immediately sought a different education in your career, and I want to get to that.
Yeah.
But before I get into your career, at what point did you become aware that you were on the spectrum, as they say?
I never was. There was always, my brain's always worked differently to everybody else's, and I just thought that maybe I was just weird. Maybe I was stupid. Hey, I didn't make it through high school. Maybe I'm not as smart as all the other kids. I couldn't even obtain a 2.0 GPA. I could not do it. I think 1.3 was like my best GPA, which is terrible, according to the standards. But my brain always worked differently, and I was always dissecting things, reading people's body language. And that also came from living with a narcissistic parent, is learning body language, because you need to know, am I in fight or in flight mode? Can constantly have to read people's emotions to know where you stand in the room and what to prepare yourself for, because you have no idea what's going to happen. So I could, I ended up reading people like a book. It's weird, just based on the way they look, the way they talk, all these different things. And I thought, okay, is this like some kind of superpower? It was just weird. It was so detailed. And then, ever since I was a kid, I've had such many sensory issues. My parents always brushed it off. They were just like, oh, there's just something wrong with him. But, he's just being a kid, could be tags in the shirt, stitching, the tightness of my shoes, like so many things. It would really hinder my day-to-day life and my mood, especially. I'd have these mood swings because the day wasn't going the way I wanted it to, and it just didn't feel right. All these things were just strange to me, but I think I was just so young that I didn't think nothing of it. As you do as a kid, you're just out there enjoying life, and,
Well, it's life. You don't know anything different. So it's
no, you don't. No, and I think even like from 16 to, 18, 19, 20, you're still young. You're still figuring out your identity. You're now just starting out in the world. You're working with adults. So I don't really think I ever had the time to sit down, especially like living with my mother as well. It's just, I never had time to think for myself. I had to think for her and make sure that she was happy all the time. And it wasn't, until I eventually moved from Naples to Central Florida and finally got away. that I actually had time to kind of relax. And gosh, I mean, I developed all kinds of things. You know, I was so anxious, and I still do to this day. I'm still learning a lot of things and kind of unloading all this baggage. Like, I finally have time to live, and I'm discovering myself, because my whole life I've lived with a wall up, because I'm in constant fear of what's going to go on next. So I don't have time to think of myself. I'm in fight mode 24/7. Now that I've got to move out and unwind and be myself, things started to develop. I started to think, okay, this isn't right. I should probably start looking into these things. And, you know, it probably wasn't until like at least maybe 6 months at best, I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, let's start reading things like on the spectrum. You know, a lot of people, you hear the word autism and they just think, okay, someone that's, you know, maybe a genius, or just maybe just not smart at all.
That was going to be my question was, you know, when I think the spectrum, a lot of people would say autism. Right. So is that the definition of the spectrum? Like, what, when you're researching it and you're taking a step outside of yourself and you're looking in the mirror and you're kind of doing that self-analysis, is that the conclusion that you came to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so, you know, I can't say anything official, but after reading all these books about uncovering it and what they call unmasking, like autism and stuff like that, is, you know, and realizing that if you're on the spectrum, it can be low or be severely high. Obviously, I'm not severely high, kind of somewhere in the middle. And what I've learned that I do, because I always wondered how I can adapt and blend in with my surroundings so well, is they call it masking. You know, and it's obviously, you know, you put the mask on, you kind of adapt and try to fit in with everybody, because I want to make sure that everybody likes me. I'm a people pleaser. Again, another thing that I dealt with narcissism. I ended up being a people pleaser, which I'm, you know, growing out of now. You know, and then I get home and I can be myself, and you know, everybody's going to be different around their partner than they are to their co-workers, because it's a different environment. You get home, you can relax, but you know, as time's gone on, I've just started caring less about people's opinions, and I don't mean that in a mean way. You know, it's just like, I wouldn't be where I am today in my life, and business and relationships, if I cared about what anybody else thought about me. You know.
So I have a couple of questions there. So with this realization, right, I think with any kind of self-improvement or self-analysis, it's important to note for people, it was for me, that there's no finish line, right?
No.
Like, it's a muscle that you have to maintain, you have to develop and then maintain. And if you lose sight of it, or you stop addressing it, stop practicing it, you're going to lose the ability to deal with some of these things, whether it be, you know, some of the tendencies or things that bother you, or it be a mental struggle that you have, or any kind of inefficiency that you have in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's young, maybe they're in high school, maybe they're even younger, they're suspicious that they have these kinds of things, and or maybe they know that they have, that they're likely on the spectrum, and they worry about how that's going to affect their life. They worry about their ability to make relationships. They worry about their ability to chase a lucrative, fulfilling career. What would you say to those people?
You know, 2 words: embrace yourself. Literally. I mean, you know, I was so scared of what people would think of me on the job site, and I would come home and I would talk to my wife and be like, I wonder if they notice that I'm a little different. And she's like, yeah, I'm sure they do. And what does it matter? You know, I try to use or see the silver lining in the situation. It's like I have this hyper laser focus when it comes to doing something, whether it was carpentry or, you know, I just recently picked up cabinet finishing. You know, I almost feel like I have a superpower, because I have been gifted with the ability to literally do anything I put my mind to. If I want to do it, I will succeed no matter what. Like, it has instilled this confidence in me that I never, ever had. I always had such a lack of confidence. Nobody would like me. I was never going to be successful. Now I'm the total opposite, which is why I moved halfway across the country. And I said, game on. And I started all over again because I'm so confident. So if you think that you're on the spectrum, research it, read these books, because it's going to open up your eyes to so many things, and it's going to answer so many questions. Why do I act this way? Why do I speak this way? Why do I think this way? There's nothing wrong with you at all. Reading these books and learning to embrace it, it's kind of it's a weird but magical thing once you really dive into it. And I don't think I'll ever stop growing. I don't think I'll ever stop discovering. But like I said earlier, I really have stopped worrying about what people think of me. And for me, I let my work do the talking for me, especially being young, and I just feel kind of socially awkward at times, and a lot of people may not even notice it. I'm probably overthinking it, like I do most things, that's like,
Right.
again, another thing. I overthink things to the 10th degree, because I like to be thorough. But
So what I heard you say was, obviously, don't let your anxiety about yourself and the way other people perceive you keep you inside and keep you from chasing something. You had a purpose. You chased it. Not only that, but your condition, we'll just call it a condition, right?
yeah,
You played that into your strength as a carpenter, right?
yeah,
So you're hypersensitive to details, probably the way things feel. You know, I'm not a detail guy. Like I could never do that. Like I said, I could never do what you do. But I find it interesting that you took that, what a lot of people would see as an obstacle or an inability or a disability, and you play that to your advantage to create a career, which, by the way, people are paying a lot of money for the skills
oh
that
yeah,
they have,
yeah,
right? So talk
absolutely.
about, so you're in 10th grade, you
Mm-hmm.
drop out,
Yeah,
you start chasing this career. Like, where'd you go? What I want to get out of you here is not telling kids to drop out of school in the 10th grade, but for young people that are in high school, maybe on a summer vacation,
yeah,
or maybe they're 18 years old, they don't want to go to college, or maybe they're on summer vacation at college.
yeah.
How do you get that first job? Like, where do you start?
So, for me, I started looking around, and I found a guy. It was another British guy, obviously much older than me, and he owned a construction company. And I said, hey, I need a job, especially being from England. I didn't have like all the credentials that I needed because I was on a visa. I said, hey, I need work. I'm young. I want to buy my first car. Like, come on, let's go. I was hungry. And he says, okay, here's a pressure washer, clean my lanai. And that was in my resume. And all he wanted to see was, A, did I show up on time? And obviously, actually show up, which a lot of people can't seem to do these days, crazy enough.
Especially in
Um,
Florida.
yeah, so show up on time. And, you didn't have to work crazy hard and kill yourself. You just, had to pace yourself and get the job done, and try your best. You may not have met their standards, but if you gave it your best and you gave your 100, that's all he wanted to see. And next thing I know, I was in with him doing pavers, stucco, drywall, trim carpentry. I mean, everything to build a home. I got to do every trade and experience everything.
Now, he was a professional in all of those things. Like, he basically became a mentor for you. Like, you were almost his apprentice, I
Yeah,
guess, right? Like, that became your education.
yeah,
And
to some degree. I mean, what it let me do is realize, for me, I didn't really like the drywall or the pavers, like all the outside work, the dirty work. I was like, it's not really for me.
yeah, not for me either.
A lot of sensory issues and just getting caked and stuff. I mean, I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I couldn't do it. Um, and then it got to the point where I was working outside in Florida. I don't do well with the heat. And I was like, I need an inside job. And I was like, well, there was trim carpentry. That's in the AC. And, next thing you know, there was another guy in town, and he says, hey, do you have a driver's license? Yeah, can you show up? Same thing again. That's all they require. No experience. They just want to know if you can show up. And so I started working inside, and, I didn't fall in love with it right away. It probably took about 6 months to kind of get a real good feel for it. And, to make a long story short, I was with him at 19 years old. By the time I was 21, I ended up finally buying my first miter saw. I was at home building, furniture out of 2x4s and just crappy Home Depot stuff. But hey, who cares? It's what I knew, and I was building. I was happy. And it kind of just grew from there. And I realized that I loved the gratification of being able to build something, especially with great detail. And I was inside in the air conditioning. That to me, I absolutely loved. And, eventually I got to the point where I outgrew the company. And I was very fortunate and thankful for the opportunity that I did get. He wanted to take me in. And then at the age of 23, I decided to start my own company, even though I was advised, by somebody like my mother, don't do it, you're going to fail. Again, that was a whole other narcissism thing, but don't do it, you're going to fail, all these things. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a overnight success story. I was valeting cars of a nighttime to keep additional income because sometimes the work was so slow. I didn't have any clientele. I just put my head down. I did my day work. I did my valet overnight. I was earning cash money. And eventually I got to the point where I told the valet guy, again, thank you for the opportunity. Couldn't have made it without you, but my business is strong now. I need to focus full time on the business.
And Tommie, how are you finding work at that time? You're 23 years old. You have an education now because from 10th grade to 23 is what, like 8 years. So
yeah.
You've had plenty of time in the field under somebody else's wing. I would call that an education, real world education.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But you were struggling. So you made the jump. You were struggling to solicit work. How were you trying to find clients, and what happened? Was it just word of mouth that your phone kept ringing? Just it was a snowball effect. More and more people found out about you. How did you go from finding a little bit of work to all of a sudden being super busy?
Yeah, so eventually it did snowball, but to start out, it was super slow. I just started cold calling people, and again, I hated calling people. It was like a huge fear of mine just to talk on the phone. I'm a text only person because it was easier to kind of put that wall there and not have social interaction. But eventually, I made a couple calls. There was a little stuff, not a huge amount, but it was enough to kind of help a little bit, maybe 25% of the business. Then I went on to Facebook Marketplace. I just started advertising my furniture that I created in my own time. And then people would say, oh, hey, that's a really nice piece. That's nice, but I'm looking for something like this. Do you make furniture? And then before you know it, when we moved into our house, I had to get my trees cut down. And so I saw an opportunity to leave a business card with the guy that was cutting my trees down because he did live edge slab stuff. He didn't do the finishing. He just did the slab. I was like, great. I'll help you sell the slabs, but I'm going to finish them, and we'll kind of have a little bit of a harmonious relationship. Again, make a long story short, that ended up not being so pretty. I learned that people in business can be really nasty. It was a good life lesson. But again, I still took that part of the business. I just see all these opportunities, and I think a lot of people don't follow through. So if you see these opportunities, just take it, because you're going to regret not doing it. So take it while it's there, whatever you do. And if you fail, that is okay, because it's a life lesson, a business lesson. It's so valuable. And, I don't really like failure. Nobody does. But there comes to a point where you do start to love it a little bit. And when you do get out of that little rut of failure, you look back and you're like, wow, I'm really glad that happened, as rough as it was in the time. The business started to kind of grow from there. And, my business was growing. And then I had to get out of, the narcissistic abuse where I was in Naples. And I said, I don't care where it is, just let's get out of here. But I couldn't necessarily afford Naples prices, or at least I didn't think I could at the time, because I was told, you'll never be able to afford your own apartment. You'll never be able to afford this. There's so many bills. You're going to have 2 roommates, all of this stuff by my mother. So I moved to Central Florida. And again, to make another long story short, I started out with a decent wage of like $45 an hour, because that was what everybody said was the highest wage in that area.
A decent wage at $45 an hour.
Yeah, and for Central Florida, they said that was the highest. Well, I was there for 3 months, and I doubled it straight off the bat, $90 an hour, and I didn't
$90 an hour for a kid who dropped out of high school at 10 years old
And it didn't end there.
10 years, 10th grade. Talk about, so money was tight, right? Obviously, because you were doing the valet thing.
Yeah.
As you're getting more work, if you look at Tommie's Instagram, he's got quite the toolkit. I'm sure you got the nice vehicle, right? What did that look like? How did you acquire those things? Were you just dumping money right back in and just buying new things, nice finished tools, the Fez tool, new truck, all those things? Talk about that.
Yeah. Essentially almost every dime I had, I invested back into myself and my business because I was confident that I was going to succeed at no matter what cost. So yeah, I mean, I started off in a little 2-door car when I was, I got my first credit card when I was 18 just to build my credit so I could buy my first car at 19 at a ridiculous interest rate. I got myself a car, started working finished carpentry, eventually got into a truck. And then the truck I added on the trailer, and I used that for 4.5 years. And then I built up my business so much. I was like, I want a Sprinter van. And boy, I was so disheartened, when I got the truck, because I thought, this is not what I want. But long term, I knew eventually I would have that Sprinter. I just had to be patient. And it was so hard to be patient because we all want instant gratification.
Right.
So, 4.5 years go by. We're in the middle of COVID. The time where everybody says, don't buy a vehicle, don't buy a house, don't do any of this stuff. This is the riskiest time. I went down to the Mercedes dealership. I sold my truck, and I ended up with positive equity to put onto the Sprinter van. And I drove out of there with a $60,000 van. And I was like,
wow.
And this was 2021. So 2 years ago now. I was 26 years old. I've got a beautiful van that I'm so proud of. And, that's really hard for me to say because I have a lot of pride in my work, but I don't have a lot of pride in myself. I'm really harsh on myself. But it was a really proud accomplishment. And, I worked with brands like Festool, which then eventually flourished into the racking system, the Bot Smart van for the van. So, I've got $20,000 worth of racking in the back of that van that was all paid for because, I was producing content and quality work and people saw the value in me. And the same with the tools. All those tools I bought over years. I didn't buy them overnight, and I didn't buy them within 6 months or even a year. It took so much time to buy these tools to get where I am today. And it's a funny story real quick is I remember buying like my second Festool item. It was a sander. It was $600 for a sander. I had to sell it because I could not afford the vacuum that went with it or even the paper that went on it. I was making $20 an hour. And I thought, you know what? I'll sell it. I'll come back to this. And now I have 4 of those sanders. And it, it's really good to look back on, to see the growth. And I can't tell you how much it really hurt to like sell that sander because I couldn't afford it. And I felt like I was going to be a failure. And now I've learned to embrace those things. And I'm like, I'm game on. Like, let's go.
I think you hit on a few things there, right? Like I am extremely hard on myself, like to a bad degree almost. But most people that I talk to that are entrepreneurs or that are successful in their own right or overcome things, they are a little hard on themselves, and it's because of the high standard that they have for themselves.
Absolutely.
And another common theme that you hear is they put in the time. They put in the time to learn from other people, even at a low wage.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, like I did, I worked several jobs to put myself through college to have no student loan. You were working as a valet, right? And then you started making a little bit of money. The other thing that you hear is that people just keep dumping and reinvesting. I just interviewed somebody, my episode that came out this week, guy owns a plumbing company. He started it with $20,000. He didn't pay himself for 2 years at all. Didn't pay himself $1. I was on another podcast like 6 months ago. Guy owns like 10 barbershops. He didn't pay himself for 11 years. Right.
Yeah.
So it's that a lot of young people need to hear this. They need to understand the importance of investing that time, that blood, sweat, and tears into your education over several years. You need to know what it's like to struggle a little bit, to take every dollar, try and find a way to get extra money to buy tools for yourself. I always tell people when you get money, don't buy a shiny toy or go out to the expensive dinner, buy yourself work boots, buy yourself a tool, because that investment in that tool, even though it seems so trivial because it's an object, that enables you to make more money down the line. That is your fishing rod instead of being handed fish.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And one more thing, unique to people, young kids today, that for years the trades weren't into. You mentioned how you basically were able to become an influencer, right? Like then these companies are actually giving you tools, or maybe even even monetize that because the content is on there and they need that.
They do.
We're able to do that too. Everyone wants a social media presence. I don't have that because I don't have a finished carpentry skill. So Festool isn't calling me to give me free stuff that I can then charge people for. So that's an excellent snowball effect that you've had in your career and in your wallet.
Yeah, it has. And you do, again, it does come with a bit of a price. You learn, like, how the corporate world works as well. I'm a small business. It's different to how corporate is. So, you learn about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which, again, has been an interesting ride, but you have to adapt. You have to overcome. And I think a big part of it as well is, believing in yourself and realizing that you are going to be successful because of you and your choices, not because of any other person or any other brand. Working with these tool brands is fantastic. I'm very fortunate. I don't take it for granted. But people have to realize at the same time that you're only going to be successful through you, not through anybody else, and I don't necessarily need these tool brands. The tool brands need me, to show other young people and even older professionals, how a tool is used in the field and why they should buy it and stuff like that. But also staying honest and keeping your integrity as well. That's another big learning curve. That's a part of it as well, because it's easy to get caught up in, shiny free tools, and it's, oh, this is great, even though it's not, but it's free. Right. Don't be afraid to voice your opinion and push back. And it's the same with clients, that little bit of pushback, people will have a lot of respect for you. But just do it respectfully.
Yeah, diplomatically is the word that I like
exactly.
that I like to use. So talk about, because we only have a few minutes left here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really unique or important point that I want to drive home for young people. A lot of young people want the freedom to travel for work. They want to move to places, experience different things. I've had that, right? My career, I started in Boston. I was able to move to California, lived on the beach for a year. Then I moved to New Jersey and New York. Then I moved back to Boston for a little while. Then 2020 came and I said, you know what? My wife and I, we want to start a family. I'm done with winter. I'm going to Florida. With my skill set as a manager in construction, even then, I'm able to take my talents pretty much anywhere. I throw a dart at a map, I can go. Like, I know that. Yep. You, I would say even more so, because you have an actual skill that you're tangibly giving to people, right? Like, people actually need your work, crave your work, and can't do it themselves. Now, you just moved from Florida to Texas.
Correct.
Right? So walk me through how much money you were making in Florida, and then you moved to Texas, no work, you don't know anybody, but you're getting work. And how much is the income comparable? Like, are you getting the same money? Is it more in that market, the Austin market, right?
Yeah, I would say the market-wise, it all depends on how much you value yourself. Because I think, like, carpenters, and I see it on Facebook all the time, and they say, oh, I'm making $35 or $45 an hour, and the high guys, they're making $65 an hour, and I'm sitting back here and making over 100, and I'm thinking, okay, are they doing something wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Like, something's not adding up here. And and I have a lot of time to self-reflect at the end of the day, and I put a lot of value in myself, the tools that I use, the quality of work that I'm giving people. Again, buying the quality tools and the quality work, I have a lot of value in myself. So yeah, I do charge, higher than average rates. And I do get pushback for it from time to time with clients. And again, it's my job to educate the clients on why it's that price. And, usually they're okay with that once we get into it.
Well, it's capitalism, right? It's your value is what people are willing to pay for it. And
Exactly.
if you're bringing a certain quality that is above average, then
Right.
you're going to have to pay above average for
Uh,
it, especially if you want it, if you want it quick, right?
Yeah.
So you got to give 2 out of the 3. It's time, budget, and quality. You're giving
Correct.
high quality. They probably want it quick. So guess what? It ain't going to be cheap.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you educate them on that, I'm sure obviously they're willing to pay for it. Right now,
Oh
were
yeah.
you charging over 100 in Florida as well?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. So Florida and Naples, I mean, especially in downtown Naples, it's, home to the biggest millionaires and some billionaires,
Yeah, we're
and
talking like a $20 million home in Naples, nothing even to shake a stick at. Like there's
yeah,
some massive homes in Naples.
yeah,
Very
gosh,
affluent area.
and I did. That's why I think my background is so good as well, because I had the ability to work in these homes that were 30, 40, $50 million and, outrageous sizes, and the quality was held to a really high standard. But I'm really blessed because I was the small fish in the big pond. So I learned so much. But I learned to value myself, and especially when I was dealing with these people that were, they're big CEOs, and they will push you around. And then you push
Yeah,
them back, and they said, hold on a minute, I like this guy. Most people are so afraid to do that, but it's like, no, I know what I'm worth, and you're not going to tell me otherwise. If you don't like it, then either we need to figure something out, or you need to pick up somebody else. And nine
right.
times out of 10, they come to the realization, because they're business owners as well, they're CEOs, they get it. And like, all right, they just try to give you a bit of a hard time. I mean, they're in that business, aren't they?
What so in 2022, what was your, because it's 2023 now, right? Like
Yes.
what was your income in the last year before you moved to Texas?
So last year I made just shy of a 200,000, and I would say probably, again, material wise, maybe 30,000 of that. Again, I attack my 10-15% on the material as well. And a lot of jobs, some jobs I was doing hourly, and I would
Okay,
tell.
so your revenue was over 200,000. You're
Yeah,
saying if you subtract the materials from the revenue,
yeah,
then
I was
you're in the
just
high ones. You're in maybe
yeah, I was just
170,
shy.
180.
Yeah, I was just shy of two, probably around like the 170, 180,
Okay.
which, I mean, saying that out loud to me is just wild, because I was making $20 an hour and taking home $680 a week off the taxes, and I make more than that in a day now,
Right.
uh, which is wild. And gosh, I go to work every day. I love my job, absolutely love it. I have some bad days, like we all do. I love my job, and I make a killer income. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And a point I want to get across as well is, there comes a certain point in your life where you get over a threshold of how much money you make, and it doesn't make a difference in the quality of your life. Something that I've realized is, don't chase the money, chase what you're passionate about. This is huge. I can't get this message across enough. I chase the money. It will kill you. You'll never be happy. The things that make me happy in life is coming home. I have the lights on. I have dinner on the table. I have a wife who loves and supports me. I have two amazing dogs. I'm so happy. I don't care about the money as such. The money is nice. It gives you the freedom, but it doesn't give you the happiness. And I've learned that, I do invest in myself. And my wife from time to time says, treat yourself. And so, I might go out, and I got a thing for watches, and I might go buy a really expensive watch, and it doesn't change the quality of my life. It's nice, and I'm proud that I finally bought something that I've just awed over for years, but it never changed the quality. We went and bought a new car. And gosh, I don't even like telling people like what I drive, because I'm not that kind of guy. But it's so nice to buy yourself nice things. But again, it didn't change the quality of my life. Sure, going from point A to point B was really fun, and it was really fast and all these things. But it didn't change anything. The things that matter to me most in life are things that money can't buy. And until you realize that, I don't think you're ever truly going to be happy. And I think that, you could make 100,000 a year, and that number is probably going to change as the economy changes and inflation, stuff like that. But again, you're going to make a certain amount of money. You're going to realize that you can buy yourself these clothes, you can buy the nice food. And what I've come to realize is that as I make more money, I don't necessarily spend it on these designer things and whatever else it is. I buy quality food now. I buy organic food. I go to Whole Foods and I just splurge on healthy food.
Yeah, you can take care of yourself better, because we all know that food in depressed areas is crap.
It is. So that by buying good food, I'm investing in myself, but my body instead of my business. But it all correlates together. So
I think you hit on a point. I just said this on a podcast like 2 days ago. Not everybody is going to love every day in the trades. Not everybody's going to love everything about it. Not everybody's going to love all of the people and the people that you see on site, the clients that you have. But that's not what it's about. It's about having a purpose and serving a greater purpose. And as long as you're chasing that, no matter what it is, the money's going to follow. Right. So when I look at, I hope a lot of young people listen to this, especially those young ones that are in high school, because when you look at it on paper, and I want to put like an exclamation point on this right now. When you look at somebody who dropped out in 10th grade, you look at somebody who had struggles with a narcissistic mother, you look at somebody that had an alcoholic father, right, who they also learned good things from, somebody that struggled with the direction, didn't even know where he wanted to go in the trade, but he showed up for work. And somebody that needed 2 jobs just to even keep it going while he busted his butt during the day in the trades. When you stack all that up, there are a lot of paths. There are a lot of lefts and rights and turns that you could have got off track, but you didn't, because you had a purpose that you were trying to serve, and you found something, a passion that you love, and the money has followed. Now here you are, you're 28 years old, and revenue is over 200 grand. You're pocketing close to 200, and that's only going to get better. And that number would probably be higher if you didn't take a month off to move to Texas, right? So this year's number might be a little bit low, but and you get that freedom where you can get up and move to an Austin, Texas. And if you and your wife wanted to get up and move again, you could. So in a world and in a society where everybody just wants to be a victim and stack up the things that is wrong with them as an excuse not to succeed, you're a shining example that people need to learn from, and that people need to look at and think, man, if this guy did it, I can do it, and I can do it even better.
100%. People do message me sometimes, and it's really, heart touching. And you're an inspiration. I said, thank you. Use me as an example and do 10 times better. It's realizing something I've realized is that I'm human. So I look at people, it could be a furniture maker, and I'm like, boy, how did they do that? And I'm thinking, well, they're human and I'm human too. And yeah, they got more experience, but dissect it. Like, you can do it too. And, I'm convinced that is whatever you're passionate about. I mean, yeah, sure. I see people, driving Lamborghinis and stuff like that. And it's like, boy, that would be nice. What do they do for a living? Maybe I should do that, because people just see the dollar signs. Whatever you're passionate about, you will be unstoppable, because if I was in tech, I would work maybe 8 hours a day and go, oh gosh, I can't stand this anymore. Mm-hmm. There's the guy behind me that's obsessed with it, doing 12 to 14 hours a day, that does it as a career and as a hobby. Oh gosh, he's going to be untouchable. You just can't keep up because it's his passion. And that's okay. It's realizing that, if you're at a job that you don't like, see if you can find something, turn it into a side hustle until it becomes the main hustle. Anything is possible. So yeah, I really hope that through this podcast that, there's people, whether they're young or even people that are in their 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever age it is, it doesn't matter. You still have time. If you're not happy with your life and you really dislike your career, it's never too late to change and do something new. Life is too short. Forget about the money. You'll always find a way to make it work. You'll find a way to make money. You just got to be happy and get out of that hamster wheel that a lot of people live in with society. That typical 9 to 5, they're miserable every day. It's just wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. It's a never-ending cycle. And I said, I got to get out of that. When I was younger, I couldn't do it. So I am blessed, and again, I hope that by me figuring this out and speaking with you publicly about it, that it brings awareness, but it also maybe lights up someone's brain and goes, you know what, maybe this guy has a point. Like maybe I should try this. And that even if it's one person, that's a success in my book.
Well, I'm sure it's going to find somebody. So, Tommie, we have a lot more to talk about that we've DM'd about, but that'll have to be another episode. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your week. Again, you guys can find Tommie at Black Label Carpentry on Instagram. Seriously, awesome stuff. Great content. Go find him. We'll talk. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.